Did you guys watch the Oklahoma spring game at all? Because Brent Venables cut a promo. I mean, it was like Dusty Rhodes in the Omni before Flair comes down the aisle. It was a heck of a promo. I have a quote here, because in the interest of time, we're not going to play it for you. But picture Brent Venables, head coach at Oklahoma, just pacing back and forth on the field in front of 54,409 Sooner fans, and he made this quote. For the naysayers who say support and attendance for a spring game doesn't matter, it's because they have a program that doesn't. Brent Venables. Pate State material quote right there. Paper pop quote. He's absolutely right. I think I said that about Oklahoma last year, come to think of it. So he may have even stole that from me. I don't care, though. It's fine. I didn't TM it. I didn't trademark it. It's his. He is right about that. That's a whole nother conversation. It's a whole nother topic. But people who say spring attendance has no bearing on the program, you've never spoken to recruits who experience it. I don't know what else to tell you. It matters. It matters. And Venables is right. Normally, the folks who are saying it doesn't matter are saying it because they can't get anyone to show up, and therefore they're kind of sort of irrelevant. I don't know if he was aiming that at anyone, but yeah, I agree with him. So anyway, what happened in this game? Well, Dylan Gabriel, who is presumably the starting quarterback there, he was last year, 12 of 18, 139 yards, 3 touchdowns, for whatever spring stats are worth for you. Quarterback depth is what I wanted to see. I know Dylan Gabriel. I know what he can do when he's healthy, but I wanted to see some Jackson Arnold, the true freshman, Elite 11 finals winner Jackson Arnold. And he played, and as is usually the case with a true freshman, wearing a blue jersey in a spring game. It was up and down. He started off slow, had a good final drive. They brought him in, I think, for the final drive and had a really good showing. Not everyone's ready in week 1. I want to remind you of this. So sometimes when we're looking at true freshmen, or players, period, but especially when we're looking at true freshmen in spring, when we're listening to practice reports from fall camp about true freshmen, everyone has week 1 as the finish line, right? They look at week 1, and when they're talking about whether you can start or whether you're going to be ready, it always leads up to week 1. Well, sometimes a true freshman clicks in week 4. Sometimes a true freshman hits that critical line in the sand that is the minimum baseline to get him on the field in a meaningful role in week 6. And so with Jackson Arnold, now you don't handle the quarterback position like this, but what I'm saying is with Jackson Arnold, if you watched him yesterday, you probably didn't say, bring on our week 1 opponent. Let's take him out there and split reps with the ones. He's ready to go. Of course you didn't think that. You may not think it come week 1 or 3 or 5. Jackson Arnold is eventually going to be good enough to win you games, whether it's this year or next year, whatever. But I have a suspicion that they're going to get into their schedule this year, and there's going to eventually come a time, sometimes it's out of a bye week, sometimes it's not, but there's going to eventually come a time where all of a sudden you start hearing practice reports about how the lights really come on in the past 2 weeks or so for Jackson Arnold. And he's found a different gear. How many times do you hear that kind of phrasing? You may hear it with him. Now, this is not exclusive to Jackson Arnold. I say this a lot about quarterbacks, especially, who aren't being counted on to start. Drew Aller at Penn State. You heard that about him last year. Not ready to go in week 1. He had to play in week 1, but you didn't hear, oh, he's ready to be the face of the program in week 1. But as the weeks went on, you just start hearing a little bit more buzz, a little bit more buzz, a little bit more buzz out of practice. I guarantee you that's how Jackson Arnold's going to be this year. Defense was the clear winner. That is a headline. That is a welcome change. Anybody who watched Oklahoma last year knows this to be the case. Do I need to do it? I think I need to do it once more. The defensive horror for Oklahoma last year. 99th in the country, points per game allowed. 119th pass yards per game allowed. 106th rush yards per game. You get the picture. If you're listening on podcast, trust me, it's bad. If you're watching on YouTube, there it is on the screen right there. TVMA special, Oklahoma's defense, year of our Lord 2022. Which brings us to yesterday. Defense looked pretty good. Now, they were going against a poverty offensive line that was missing multiple starters, and they will rectify that. They will be a whole lot better version of themselves come fall than they were yesterday. So I don't want to overreact. It's one of the cardinal sins, right? Don't overreact to spring games. But their defense looked good. And a couple of names that stood out, including one that we focused a lot of our attention on. Deshaun McCullough, when we were doing our transfer portal intel, McCullough was one of the names that I told you to break out the red Sharpie and circle. And just press down as hard as you can. If the paper rips, don't worry about it. You need to know this name. And he is a transfer from Indiana. And he was dynamite in his season at Indiana. And he is a guy kind of like Gums out of North Texas. Goes to a lower tier school. Now this time it's a Big Ten school, but goes to a little bit lower tier school. Balls out. It erases any kind of questions you may have had about him coming out of high school, and all of a sudden, you got a 6'5", 225-pound out of high school edge. Now, he's come in, and he was all over the place yesterday. So he's an immediate impact guy. He's everything we thought he would be. Lewis at linebackers, like a sophomore linebacker, he had 11 tackles yesterday. Now, you may think if you look at the stat sheet, hey, there's another impact linebacker. I'm not so sure because the kid barely weighs 200 pounds, but that's a blessing that one of the standouts statistically in your spring game on a defense that was terrible last year, you can afford to look at and say, nice spring game, go put on some weight, and then come back and we'll talk. I don't think that he will ride the bench all year. I'm just saying that is one area. 11 tackles, that's great, but 11 tackles notwithstanding, that's probably not a frontline linebacker for you, which translates to depth being built in Norman. How much will that defense improve? It's the question. It will improve because statistically, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it can't get much worse than it got last year. But Peyton Bowen, kind of the lost 5-star, if that exists, from Oklahoma signing class. 5-star safety from Denton, Texas. He's going to start at safety for him. We got a Caleb Downs situation in Alabama. You got a Peyton Bowen situation in Norman. And the reason is, and follow me here because this is pretty advanced, he's just better. He's just too good to keep off the field. Did I lose anyone with that explanation? I'm sorry. It got deep there for a second, community. It got deep, but he's good, man. So you're getting a lot of verification on a lot of these highly rated guys they brought in. They did not have a formidable offensive line yesterday, so I'm not making too much out of this, but I want to reemphasize, for those of you who think that there's a lot of panic out there, and for those of you who think because they were woeful and were hovering around 500 that there's a lot of panic and a lot of rethinking the Brent Venables hire, maybe outside, not inside the walls. That's why the mood tracker around Oklahoma was clear the mechanism. The outside noise doesn't matter. What people in Austin or Manhattan or Nashville, for that matter, are saying about your head coach doesn't matter. That energy you brought yesterday matters. Him walking around with the mic in his hand, cutting the promo on the field, hey, it matters to me. But ultimately, acquiring the talent they've had the past couple of cycles, portal and recruiting, and improving this year. If they do that, none of that noise matters anyway. And they still have full confidence. As far as I can tell, they still have full confidence in their guy there.